Welcome to Off the Deep End. This podcast endeavors to bring you compelling, inspiring content to encourage you to pursue your dreams, reach for your potential, and stay aligned with your purpose and vision. I'm Rachel Tamilio, and I want to remind you that you have more power, promise, and potential than you probably realize. In today's episode, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine. She is a coach, a women's empowerment coach, a blogger, and a teacher. And together we discuss the complexities, the challenges, and the joys of building healthy relationships. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Hi, my name is Christina Daniels, and I am a woman's empowerment coach, and I'm also a lifestyle, self-help, relationship, and self-love blogger. And I enjoy empowering women to achieve the best that they want in life, go after their dream relationship, job, and just be an all-around healthy person internally so that there's no emotional obstacles blocking these women from going after their dream life, really.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And this is very personal to you, right? You've shared a little bit with me
Absolutely.
about challenges, difficulties, hardships even you've been through with regard to relationships. Could you share some of that with us?
Absolutely. So I I have been in a couple different relationships that were a little bit unhealthy, and I sat down one day with a friend, and I was complaining about something, and she said, "Sis, it's you." And I'm like, "What do you mean it's me?" And I was offended. Um, and I sat back and I looked and I thought about it, and I was like, what is it about me that's allowing unhealthy situations in my life? And some of it was that I was allowing it, like didn't, I would see the signs, I would see unhealthy things happen, and I'd make excuses for people. I'm an extreme people pleaser. And I think that people like myself that have a very empathetic gift, we want people to feel better, and sometimes we do it at the expense of our own emotions, and I found myself doing that. So just a disclaimer for anybody that is in a unhealthy relationship: of course we don't choose for how somebody treats us. I want to make that clear. Like, there's situations for sure where we are unhealthy is thrown upon us. But for my specific situation, I accepted the unhealthy when I sat back and looked. And there's a lot of potential for unhealthy relationships. And I have the choice, and I realized that in my first relationship, and then a couple other situations, I realized this was happening in friendships too, where I would allow people to just treat me very poorly. And if I even told you some of the things that would happen, I think you'd be like, wow, how would you let somebody treat you like that? And the truth is, I didn't think I was worthy of being treated better. So a lot of the times I didn't even realize they were treating me poorly until I started, which is why I'm so invested in self-love and self-growth. Because the truth is, unless we raise our inner self-esteem, it's hard to even realize, like, this is what I'm worthy of. I'm worthy of a good person. I'm good friendships, a job that's not yelling at me, with a boss that's yelling at me. Because I think toxic can look so different for different people, and it's not just relationships. It could be friendships, mother, daughter, father, job. It could be a nurse that's taking care of us, and maybe somebody's ill and they think, like, I deserve this type of treatment because I'm frustrating to deal with. It just it touches my heart deeply, because when we don't love ourselves, it really leaks out into the world, and we can attract things that we don't deserve.
Right. Well, that's a really difficult place to come to where, you ask yourself those hard questions. And I can really empathize with that. And knowing you just a little bit of time that I have, I think that big heartedness, that empathy that you have, it can kind of work against you in this sense, is that you can almost go too far with people pleasing at your own expense. And it's a very common thing to do, I think, with heart-centered professionals like you are. Um, and I've made similar mistakes for sure. I was wondering, would you feel comfortable sharing some of those red flags that you saw, in hindsight? Because often when we're in the heat of something, like you said, you don't see it, you're too close to it. When you look back is when you see, okay, this is where maybe that, derailed me a little bit. Could you share some of those red flags with us?
Absolutely. That's such a good question. I think one of the biggest red flags that I'm noticing is it feels like a red flag, right? It feels icky. Um, and usually there's some type of confusion that comes with it. Like, why did that happen? And you're usually ashamed to ask the person because I don't think most of us want the answer. And it's something that most of us won't even share with a friend, family, mentor, a coach. It's something that we're usually trying to keep inside because we don't usually want the answer. So I think that would be the first thing, is like something feels wrong. And then maybe the second is we're trying to hide it a little bit from other people because we're not sure what's wrong about it, but we don't want to hear it from somebody that's going to potentially judge us. Um, and then I think one-sided effort, when you're the one doing most of the effort, spending the money, making the calls, pouring out the love, that could be a sign, especially when the other person's putting pressure on you to keep doing it at a level that you can't perform at and they're giving nothing in return. I think at the end of these relationships, we often feel severely drained and just in a constant cycle of chaos. And I think one of the other things that I would say is nothing is changing, right? Because I think at the end of the day, a lot of people put labels on this is toxic, that person's toxic nowadays, and it's becoming a buzzword. And the truth is that we're humans and we should be given a little space to be imperfect, right? But I think when imperfect becomes a problem is when, one, the person refuses to change, two, the person can't see what needs to be changed and refuses to look further, or three, the person is pretending to change, but the problem keeps happening over and over because that they're just essentially lying to just keep the relationship going.
Right. I think those are some fantastic distinctions you made. Um, and again, I too have been in that situations. I can really empathize. And I think women especially tend to think that, these relationship struggles are limited to just the romantic relationships, and they definitely affect that. But that is certainly not the only space that they sneak into and can really cause some damage and some injury. Looking back to, and I'm not trying to play therapist here at all, but looking back, do you see anything like about your life, about your background that kind of set you up for not recognizing, or maybe not adhering to your own intuition that was screaming at you, something's off here, something's not right? Can you think of anything that set you up for that?
Absolutely. That's such a good question. One, I was raised in a very giving household. My mom is a people pleaser. She's the same as me. She just loves people to feel loved, and just grew up not really. She grew up in the country of Jamaica, so while she's socialized, it's not a place where you have to be afraid fully of people because everybody knows everybody. You know who to stay away from. So she grew up very sheltered, not really aware of like manipulation, gaslighting, you know? So I grew up with that same mentality as my mom that everybody's safe. And I think my mom realized that, but just not maybe knowing how to pass that on to your children a little bit because it's a little taboo to talk about those stuff. Like relationship stuff in Jamaica. I think it's becoming better, but it's a little taboo. Especially when you're of a certain age, like it's weird because you need to be prepared, but in order to be prepared, we have to talk to you about something that's uncomfortable. So it's like that tension. So setting up, being a little naive, people pleaser, I think I jumped into a relationship thinking, oh, this is great. He has the same intentions that I have for him, and we have the same family background. I had no idea that, which there's nothing wrong with this, but I'm coming from maybe a household with some secure attachment and some, like a household where I felt loved and I felt wanted and I didn't feel abandoned versus the first person I dated. His household is I feel abandoned, I feel rejected, I have insecure attachment, I have issues with my mother. So I came in trying to play a mother role in his life, and he fed into that. And then, long story short, my parents did get a divorce, and realizing later that I had some daddy issues of my own. So, you know, as any human, we need to feel secure, we need to feel safe, especially as women, right? And then here he's providing me with the type of dad dynamics that I'm missing, and then I'm providing him with the mom dynamics that he's missing. So it did. You know, when people ask me about the relationship, I'm like, I honestly can't even talk badly because I'm not the only one that came in with something. I came in broken, and I like if I'm offering in a sense to mother him and then I stop, that's what he needed. That's what he came into the relationship for. So in my head, I'm like, it makes sense why sometimes people that are struggling with unhealthy things like they react negatively because it was a source of life for them and I took away their source of it. I'm not excusing you know, abuse or mistreatment, just saying I understand that some people are deeply wounded and giving them love and then taking that away can resemble rejection, abandonment, and severe wounding that their body's not able to fully process that withdrawal sometimes.
Yeah. You balance this out so well. I don't think, anybody could come away from these stories of your experiences feeling like it's their fault or their response. I mean, I know, everything comes into play in relationships, which is why they're so challenging. But yeah, I appreciate that you keep emphasizing that there are legitimate reasons to exit a relationship, and there are times where that's just really imperative for your own, mental and emotional and spiritual health. I wanted to read something to you if you don't mind. I came across this recently. It's no one you've ever heard of. I just thought it was so well said, and it's about this concept of people being toxic. I've noticed lately the word toxic being thrown around like it's nothing. In my humble opinion, people aren't toxic. Chemicals are toxic, drugs and alcohol are toxic. Anyone who you feel is toxic is broken inside and probably in a ton of pain, and their actions speak it. If they were healed and not in so much pain, chances are they wouldn't act that way. So if you have someone in your life that you consider toxic, pray for them, hug them, Tell them you love them, but do not love their behavior. Let them know you hope they heal and that you will be there for them when they're ready to. It's okay to keep some distance until they do. Be the person that encourages them to shoot for change. Be the person that directs them to the light. Trauma sucks. Darkness effing sucks. Encourage them to let go of the pain and set their spirit free. You may be the only person that does. Remember, Jesus favored the broken. Just my thoughts. That was written by a woman by the name of Kelly Brady. And it just landed beautifully with me. I think she's right. I think toxic and trauma are two words that are just being so overused. And I'm guilty of it. I've caught myself even recently. Um, it's too easy sometimes to just parrot those phrases and not really realize what we're saying. And, I've definitely had moments like that. But how did that land with you? Is she right about that? Are people toxic?
So first of all, I love what you said, and you're right. These words are being tossed around, and red flags too, right? That's a red flag. That's a red flag. Um, we're humans, and we should be allowed to be human, and our all of our behavior shouldn't be under this microscope, you know? So some of my clients too, when they're going back into dating after, we have to work through not being so hyper vigilant about looking for problems, because we can know too much, you know, and people are allowed to evolve and grow. So I would have to agree with you. Just because it's a red flag doesn't mean it's a red flag. You know, I could be having a bad day. So with the article, I would 100% agree. And that's something that I always try to catch myself when I'm talking. I would say toxic behaviors or toxic relationship. People aren't toxic, it's the situation or the behavior. And absolutely, I think those words are being thrown around a little bit. Like I said, with red flags, maybe he didn't call the person after 2 days. That's toxic behavior. He's cheating. No, that's not toxic behavior. When we're talking about deeply toxic behavior or dysfunctional behavior, we're talking about psychologically maladaptive manipulation, control, devious behavior that's going on for periods of time where there's a pattern and the person is intentionally doing it, right? Because I think right now we could be talking and you ask me a question and I could lie, but I wasn't lying because I'm intentionally trying to harm you or lie. It could be I got embarrassed and it was just a gut knee jerk reaction and I lied. And maybe I'll come back later and say, I'm so sorry. You know, this is the truth. I just couldn't contain myself in that moment. My emotions were high. Not everybody's able to apologize after those moments because guilt and shame are real things, but it doesn't make that lie toxic. I would classify a toxic lie as I maliciously told you a lie to get what I want, and then I continued in that behavior, knowing that knowing I'm lying to you and kind of almost messing up your reality a little bit. You know, like I didn't get on a Zoom call with you, Rachel. I don't know what you're talking about. And then you're like, yeah, but we have it recorded. I, I don't know what you're talking about. And then you're like, but
Yeah.
if I have it recorded, how do you not know what I'm talking about? And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, Rachel. I think that I don't, do you even have a recording? You know? And someone like that might go into your computer and delete it, you know, just to further that confusion. And then most people that are susceptible to that behavior, once that video is deleted, I continued acting like I didn't do this video. You'd be like, maybe we didn't do the video because I must be crazy because she's so sure of herself. And then So I think that's for me what I would call unhealthy behavior. It's intentional.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, that's a perfect like example. Um, I think whenever, for me, this is a red flag, is that whenever you're in a relationship of any kind, again, it does not have to be romantic, where you're consistently feeling like there's something wrong with you, there's something that,
That's an amazing one. That's
yeah, there's something
amazing.
wrong with you. It's always your fault. Um, if this is bothering you, but not me, then you're the one with the issue. Oh, I've had fun with that one. Um, everybody has their own threshold of things that bother them, things that annoy them. And I think part of building a healthy relationship, and tell me how you feel, but I think part of building a relationship is beginning to understand, what are those boundaries? Create those boundaries, hold to those boundaries, not just for yourself, but for the person you're in the relationship with. And one thing I tell my clients all the time is boundaries are loving. They're not unloving, and they're not selfish. They're loving.
Absolutely. My background's loud, so I'm muting myself
Okay.
to as you talk. Wow. I love what you said. That really hit it. Like there's something always wrong with you and you're always fixing it and fixing it. And I feel like people that tend to be in unhealthy relationships, we have this overactive consciousness of like right and wrong. So we're always trying to do the right thing and be like, oh, this is, and we almost mind guess why they're doing what they're doing. And usually we're right. So we go and do it for them and we fix and we fix. But at some point, those are goodies that we should reserve for somebody that's also taking the initiative to love us well, you know?
Mm.
And boundaries, absolutely. I think one of the biggest boundaries that I've had to learn, Rachel, is not trying to play God in people's life. And because I realized in me trying to play God, in me trying to fix their issues, and me trying to make them one thing, something that would come across in my mind is I want to make them feel more loved than anybody has made them feel before. It was almost like a challenge for me, like I'm going to make them feel so loved. But guess what? In me doing that, I was literally setting up myself for something I couldn't continue to do. And I false advertised myself. I
Mm.
think of it like a bucket. They're like an empty bucket sometimes, some people that go in relationships. And I'm like, yeah, I got all the love. And I'm just filling up their bucket. But then I realized that their bucket had holes. And every time I fill it up, it's leaking out, and eventually I don't have anything else to put in the bucket, and they get upset because when people don't have a supply of love, or I like to call it love drugs, when the supply of love drugs goes low, the bucket is empty, they go through withdrawal, they go through real cravings, and like children, they throw tantrums, because I do believe that a lot of people haven't been properly fed as children emotionally. So they grow up into adults that still need that feeding. And when they're not fed, they react. So if I don't provide them something that I could never fully do, then it automatically cuts off a certain group of people from wanting to date me. They're like, oh, she's not giving me the supply I need. She's not trying to push past her own boundaries to love me like no one else. And yeah, I think that's one of them. And another boundary is I can say no,
And
right?
no is a complete sentence, right? That's a big one. No is a complete sentence.
And that's another red flag, right? If you're scared to say no, or your no keeps being manipulated into yes.
I've been on both sides of this. I've been the one to be like passive aggressive at times because I feel like I'm getting cheated or the relationship is lopsided somehow. I own that. So I want to make that clear. And I had to ask myself difficult questions, and do my own inner work. But I had to go through that process myself of owning I really blew it here. I'm blowing it here, and I need to fix this. So go ahead.
I love what you're saying because I think not to absolve personal responsibility from you, but um, sometimes the previous situations that we've been through have been so traumatic that our bodies literally haven't reset. So we're in a relationship and we become hyper vigilant about not being abused again. So we can become passive aggressive because it's like I'm we've learned not to speak up maybe because those behaviors might hurt us. So then we stuff them in, but eventually they pop out and then we're giving it to them person in that way. And sometimes we almost want the person to, in my life, it's almost like we're waiting for the person sometimes to continue those abusive behaviors. So it could be like, aha, I knew you weren't different, and just walk away so we could
Mhm.
self protect, you know? And to the extreme, it can become self sabotaging, you know? So,
For sure.
um, in my ability to, in my process of healing and dating after emotional abuse, I would say that I've had to grapple with those same emotions of like wanting to defend myself before something happens or to think the worst before something happens, you know, and because this is my field of work, I check myself, you know, and I'm like, wait a second, you're about to self sabotage because you think that they're doing that. How about you have a healthy conversation, Christina? And that's hard, you know, because in the past, when I've tried to have a healthy conversation, it was very name calling, you know, it was very condescending. It's, you know, maybe a simple question like, hey, I didn't understand what you meant by that and it hurt. Why are you always taking things the wrong way? You're so negative. You're this, you're that. And I'm like, no, 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 no. And it just became this verbal onslaught, you know? So just saying this for any of the viewers out there, as you were mentioning, Rachel, like these are real life things to be walking out a relationship and struggle with because at the end of the day, I think our bodies have self protection mechanisms that are designed, I believe, by God to help us navigate relationships. But I think when we've been in bad situations, our alarms internally get a little haywire and they might alarm, we call it false alarms. Your body might come out with a false alarm. And because that feeling is